Well, hello and welcome to Basics with Blender, episode 7, with that BBBBB crazy name. Building the bits to Blitz, balloons, blobs and blurs. So if you saw this intro when I did the Blitzing with Blender episode, you might have seen that intro, and I'm not extremely happy with it. I think it should be 3D, and I should create that along with you. So I'm William, and this is Basics with Blender, and today we're going to be doing basic animation, cloth simulation, just whatever seems to make sense for this. So let me show you what I have over here. So here is the file that I created with my little blender with a little animation on it. So what I want to do is, inside there I've got a little bit of my little cloth bit thing. It wasn't too bad. It was quite fun. So I did it in 3 sort of parts. I did the basic modeling, which has that time lapse of creating it. Then I did the cloth simulation of the plane falling into the bucket, and then there's a little animation of the thing spinning. So I can actually find the one. It's probably this one. So for this, I did a cloth simulation, and I think I'm going to be showing you a lot about that today. So I used a few controllers to suck it up and chuck it into the jug, whatever you want to call it. Pop the lid on, and then I switched to a whole new scene for actually working with this, because it's just easier to do it that way, in my opinion. So the blender itself is just a fairly simple thing. It's just a cube that I modified with booleans and stuff. I don't know if you want to see me do that, but I think I kind of have done that sort of stuff. A little jug that I just added some little seams and details and stuff onto it. Even added some little measuring indicators and stuff, which just make it seem a little bit more real. And yeah, so what I really found that I didn't enjoy out of it was that little logo, because it's just it's not 3D, and it should be 3D because it's a Blender thing. So let me just quickly find my little logo, and let me just pop it into Blender so you can actually look at it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to recreate, I'm not sure if you saw on my Instagram just now, the inflation logo, well, text that I made. So I'm going to make sort of balloon inflation text out of that, and some 3D text for blitzing, which I'm going to actually spin around out of the blender, and then I think maybe tip it over and have stuff pour out or something like that. I'm kind of winging it, seeing how it goes, but I'm going to give you some basic animation tips and stuff. Well, how to do some basic animation. So let's start. How are we going to do this? I'm going to start with the blitzing text. That I think might be okay to work with as just like extrude it a little bit, but then this blender text I want to have it be an actual 3D object. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use my favorite thing, the I'm going to use my knife tool, and I'm going to create a plane. Where is it? Image as planes. Okay, so there's an add-on for Blender called Images as Planes. You can enable that in Preferences, Add-ons, and find Images for Planes is built in. But what it allows you to do is when you normally just import an image and put it onto a plane, it's going to be whatever size the plane is. But if you use this Images as Plane add-on, it'll create let me just switch to Eevee. It'll create a plane the same dimensions as that image. So if I go find my image, I think it is this one. Then if I switch to this, there we go, we've got that as a flat plane that we can now work with over here. So I'm actually going to duplicate that so I can use it again later. Because this one that I just dragged in is just a preview object. It's not actually a mesh that you can edit. There might be a way to convert it, but it's just easier to use the images as planes. So I'm going to use the knife tool, and I'm just going to cut out bits over here. Actually, let me do it a little bit differently, because I think that kind of looks cool. It's not perfect, but recreating that from scratch might take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to cut that in half, delete this face, oops, face. So then we've got that, and then I can basically just divide it up into little segments so we can bend it a little bit. And then we can start doing some basic animation stuff. Doesn't have to be perfect because I'm just trying to make some segments on here. So let me just grab that out of the way. So I want this to be about the same size as this jug over here. So let me just sort of pop it in the middle like this. Maybe a little bit bigger. And then there are various ways we can make this circular to sort of fit around here. Since I want to edit it and animate it to sort of flip around, modifiers are a nice way to do this. So if I was doing a smaller object that could just fit straight on it, there's a shrink map wrap modifier, so that will shrink it onto a thing. So if I do that, it will sort of squish it onto the surface. But because it's a little bit bigger than this, it will get kind of squashed and stuff. So if I was going for something a little bit smaller to just fit on the surface like that, that would be fine. But I want it to be bigger, and I want to actually animate it a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, let's try the simple deform and use a bend. Yeah, I think X would work. No. Z? Y? Why is it not working? Let's see. That is not working like what I expected. Okay, so what I'm going to do though is, I think maybe wrapping it with that might be a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do is show you something that's really nice for simple animations. So that's a thing called shape keys. So if you go to the object data properties, you'll see there's a thing called shape keys over here. And basically what a shape key is animating the shape of an object. So a key, like a keyframe and stuff, is basically saying what a value of something is at a moment in time. So if you're shape keying, you're basically keying the shape to fit in at different points. So for this, you need to select your objects and add a shape key, and that'll be the basis. So that'll be this is what the object by default will look like. So anything you change in the mesh of this will affect the basis. And this is just a nice way to fall back on a default shape. So then if we want to start changing it, we can add another key. So we've got a key one here, so I'm just clicking on the plus. So if I now go into edit mode and let's grab some vertices over here. Let's go for a spherical transform. No, let's use a smooth. And then I can just sort of make this shape fit as I see fit. Sorry, terrible wordplay. So did you guys enjoy the blitzing with Blender thing that I did the other day? I quite enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. Looking forward to doing it again. So let me just grab this. I enjoyed your Battle Cruiser prompt. I think that one was my favorite of them all. It just looked cool. So see, I could have done this with the shrink wrap thing and had pretty similar results, but at least this I can sort of customize. So now you see if I go back out of edit mode into object mode, it just goes back to looking normal. So that's because this key, and you've got to make sure that you have clicked on the key when you go into edit mode to edit that specific key. Sorry, I didn't say that. So you see if I click on that, it's showing this edited key. If I go out of edit mode, click on the basis, and go into edit mode, it's the original flat thing. So what you can do then is you can see where it says 000 there. If I drag that up, you can see how it sort of squishes to fit around here. So this is probably the first thing I'll show you with doing animation. So basically anything in Blender, you can add a keyframe onto it to animate it. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this up to 1 to have it bent around the shape a little bit. And then I'm going to hover my mouse over it and I'm going to press, you see where it says the value over here, so that's what's changing, it's 1. So if I press I, what it's saying is I'm adding a keyframe to that specific thing. That's just the easy shortcut to do that. So anything that you hover over and you press the I key will add a keyframe with the current value over there. You can also right click on it and say insert. In this case I've already got a keyframe, so it's replace keyframe. But it's just way easier to just hover over and say I. So then I can move the timeline, so that's this little bar at the bottom. So this is where you see your little animation. So if I just move further on in time, you'll see I've got this little orange dot here. That is the keyframe that I added for this key over here. So if I now drag this down to 0, you'll see it's showing a little orange color there. That's saying this is an altered thing that's you haven't applied. So if I press I now, it goes sort of yellow, and now that's applying that keyframe with a value of 0. So if I now go through the timeline, you can see how it sort of pops open around there. So I'm going to do, I've already got this Blender sort of shaking around while it's doing stuff there. So what I want to do is match this text so it sort of fits along with that. Don't think that was smooth shaded. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a frame where it is flat. So I'm going to select this text, the object that I want, and then shift click the base, because that's what's animated. And I'm going to do a thing called parenting. So what this will do is whenever the one object moves, the other object will move with it. So if I now say Control P, I can say set parent to object, and I'm going to say object keep transform, because I want it to stay the same separation away from it. So now when I move this timeline along, you see that the text is staying along with the Blender. I'll show you how to do those motion animations a little bit later. So, in fact, I'm going to show you right now. So what I want to do now is have this spin around, the text spin around here. Let me just check which way it's rotating. It's rotating, looks counterclockwise to me. So, if I rotate this on the Z, you'll see it's rotating around that pivot point over there, which is not where I wanted to rotate. So that's not ideal. So what I wanted to do is actually rotate around the center. So what I can actually do is select my thing, and the center is the center of this base, basically. Well, it should be, or close enough. So I'm going to select the text and select the base, and then I'm going to go into search, so that's space F3, and I'm going to search for origin. And there's a thing here called set origin. And I'm going to say, oh, there's no origin to selected. Huh, I thought there was an origin to selected. Okay, but we have another option. We can select our base, and if we go 3D cursor, set 3D cursor, we're setting that little center thing. Well, no, it didn't. Cursor. Snap cursor to active. That's what you want to do. So, snap cursor to active. Select that. It puts the 3D cursor, which is basically just a point in space that you can use to do various things. So then I can now select my text, and I can say origin, set origin to 3D cursor. So now the center point of this text will be that little center of the base. So now if I rotate on the Z, it'll rotate around that point. Looks a little bit wonky because I made a funny little shape for that, but that's fine. So what we're going to do is now we're going to animate rotation. So you'll see that's this rotation on the Z over here. Z, whichever we want to say. So if I go to my camera view, that's pressing numpad 0. I want it to start where we can't really see it properly. So sort of like that. I'm going to press the I over the rotation. That will set the rotational keyframe there. And then we can move along and rotate this, I don't know, that much. So then it starts facing the camera, and then press I again. So now if we go through here, we'll have this text spinning around there. Really simple animation, but it already starts to look way cooler than the thing that I did before. ICG. It still looks a little bit weird because it sort of starts in the middle of nowhere. I need to have a Zoidberg thing for that. Sorry, I just love Zoidberg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it. So I'm going to put a keyframe. So let's go about this point. So that's where we want it to start being full size. Corgis. So I'm going to go over scale, and I'm going to press I to set keyframe for the scale. Then go back to the start. And then I'm just going to find a scale in, not in the Y, something like this. Well, thanks for the brief join in. So I'm just going to scale it so it's sort of in the jug over there. Set a keyframe, and now we'll have it sort of blend out coming from there. It won't really blend, but blend. That was unintentional, but we're gonna have motion blur and stuff on there, so that will look a little bit cooler. So shut up. So unfortunately I can't really show you proper motion blur because I'll have to use cycles, because I think I showed you in a previous episode that motion blur, unless you're using a specific add-on, only works if the camera is moving in EV. So I'd have to use another renderer, but it slows down my stream, so I'd rather not do that. I will render this out after the stream, and hopefully it looks cool. Okay, so I think that's a good start for that. What I want to do now, I think, is have some fun with some simulation. So at the moment we have basically just a crumpled sheet of I'll just go in there, my screen, which I've crumpled up into there using a cloth simulation. We're going to get onto that a little bit later. But I kind of want there to be a bit of liquid in there, because that's kind of what you get when you blitz up something in a blender. I mean, not a sheet of cloth, but you know what I mean. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to have this do that and then tip over. So instead of just stopping and going flat, have it tip over and spill out its stuff. So I'm going to select the base, because that's what I've been using to animate. And instead of going to this keyframe where it's flat on the ground, I'm going to rotate it. Let me go into my camera view so I can find a point here that looks good. Money, give me money. Thanks, Luke. So I'm just going to move this until I find it looks in a somewhat plausible position. Now we could go crazy and do something using actual physics simulation for this tipping, but we're already going to have a bunch of stuff for simulation, so this at least we can guide where exactly we want it to. So I'm just rotating it so it looks like it could sit on that side. And just holding in shift so I get very precise movements and just getting it down so it doesn't really clip through the base. And then I'm going to apply rotation and location keyframes. So what we'll see though is that we'll get a bit where it sort of clips through the base there because it's just rotating it. It's not, doing physics. So we're going to have to sort of go in the middle here. And if we go just edge on to this corner, so I'm going to go into orthographic view and rotate the camera just so it's sort of on the edge here. I'm going to grab it up so it looks like it's sort of tipping on that corner. There might be a frame or two where it sort of does a little bit more clipping, and also it's sort of, instead of tipping, it's sort of sliding. So what we kind of want to do is have the corner sort of stay in one spot there. So let's shift right mouse button. That's what it is. So I'm just going to put the 3D cursor there so I can see the point. So shift right click, and then you see how far it sort of slides along. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just drag it along over here so that that corner sort of stays roughly in the same spot. I'm not going to go too crazy on this. I to apply those keyframes. Okay, it is doing a funny slide thing there. Let's just zoom out and see. I wasn't at the corner, I was in the middle. See, that's why it helps to pan around and see all sides of your object. Not just looking from a two-dimensional point of view. Like Khan! Sorry. Star Trek references. That might have blown out your ears. I don't know how loud my microphone is now. And then let's go to this last frame, grab it, rotate it, and sort of try to keep that as well in the same point. So this is just minor tweakings, but it helps it sort of feel realistic if an object falls naturally. But this is like super basic animation, just moving it, setting it to look. So see, now it looks more like it's sort of falling over because it's... Wait, why is it over there? Then we can add a little bit of a slide to that. So I'm just going to the top view, grabbing it, sliding it there. Don't know why I didn't do that properly in the first place. I to apply the keyframe. You can also, if you don't hover over something, you just press I in the middle of the screen, and you can say insert a keyframe to any one of these specific things. So location, rotation, scaling, all that sort of stuff. So then what we can do, just to make things feel even more natural, I'm just going to hide this for now because we don't need to see that text. So I just pressed H to hide. So then we've got this little lid over here. So when this falls over, we want the lid to pop off. So I'm just going to press. Okay, it's already got a keyframe, so let's now go a couple frames on, grab it out, rotate it so it's sort of on the ground. Let's just get it before it just starts to clip into the ground there. And rotate it flat. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect. I go location and rotation, so then it will fall, and then we see how it transforms between those two positions, and it's a little bit weird because it's actually rotating quite far. So what we can do is just go into the middle between those keyframes, find an intermediate spot, find something. I'm just doing it very basically. So let's see. So that's, we don't have many frames over here, so this actually needs to be slower because this is going super quick. So one thing you need to think about is this is going at 24 frames per second. So if you look at the timeline, we're going from 99 to 206. So that's not even 10 frames. So that's, no, not even half a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the indicator over here to the 99 point. I'm going to select these keyframes, and I'm just going to press S to scale. And this is now going to be, so yeah, like 2 seconds or so of animation. So this way we will have more time to see what it's doing. And it's sort of doing a weird little thing over here, but we can think then this would do something. That start bit sort of feels right. That sort of, except for that clipping over there, but we'll fix that. Sort of rolls out, tips, and then it sort of slides on the ground. So we just need to do it, I think, have a little bit of more sharp thing being on the edge when it starts to flip. And it kind of actually is. Pops off, then it goes into the ground. We don't want that. So let's move that up a little bit. And then it starts sliding back. We don't want it to slide back. We want it to keep moving, because that doesn't look realistic. There we go. And then it starts going underground again. This would be a nice point to add a bounce, because things usually bounce instead of going through objects. So we're going to pop it up into the air a little bit. Bonk. And then that would sort of naturally start rotating a bit as well during that bounce. So let's just get that sort of around that same point. Oh, it's quite a hard bounce, but a little bit of exaggeration works. And then it sort of just smooths idly down, which is weird. So we want that to actually do something a little bit more interesting. So let's have it touch there. Bounce, bonk, bonk. Bounce, grab, rotate. Maybe do that sort of drop fall sort of spinny thing. I don't know what you would call that. Sure, you know what I mean. Which will be pretty hard to animate, but let's see. So that's... I'm just using the default interpolation of keyframes, which is how they go between things. I think we'll go into more detail on that sort of stuff, or more advanced stuff. I'm just trying to keep this fairly simple. So that looks more like it's a plane coming into land, which is not what we want. We want it to hit. Let's go a little bit faster. And then it sort of slides too far. So let's go to the top view. So it starts there, goes there. So let's move it more over here. Let's see. So now I'm just going to go into all sides and make it as flat as I can. I could, if I hadn't had this parented to another thing, actually use those numbers and make it 90 degrees or whatever, but it's parented to another object. So these rotations will be a little bit weird. So I have made things a little bit more complicated for myself. If you don't know what I mean, don't worry about it. So I just added keyframes with it flattish. So now we've got, it still does a little bit of sliding, and it sort of flattens a bit quickly, but a little quick thing there, it's alright. It's a little bit weird actually, but let's not worry about that for now. I can always tweak this later. So now we've got the jug, which probably should also come off by itself, because it kind of feels weird that the top falls off and the jug doesn't. But it's alright. So I'm just going to animate the camera a bit. So we've got this, let's turn on where's the thing I hid? It's not this, is it? I don't know what happened to my text. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. So what you would have to do then is there is a add-on for Blender called Shoutout, I think, which allows you to do that. So what it will do is it will procedurally break it up into objects. But what I'm wanting to do is have liquid spill out and have stuff come out of there. I might do cracking or shattering, but hadn't thought of doing that today. It's a little bit more advanced. Did I delete? Show hidden objects. No, I didn't. Don't know where it went there. So I just want to see. So I want this to also move. So when that starts falling, let's have a keyframe for it over here. Location rotation. And then let's go to just before that animation stops. Grab this, rotate it. Because I'm trying to make a sort of a logo-y sort of thing with this. that might be alright for now. Let's go I. So now we've got twists, falls. So because it's going between weird rotations over there, it's making some funny twisting, which is a little bit weird. Interesting in a way, but kind of weird. Do I have... Let me just check my add-ons. Trying to remember what it was called. Crate. Yeah, I might do this in another episode then, but I can't think of where it is now. So what I was going to do is fill this with liquid and have it pour out, and then have the with Blender be the text that I have in, let me find this, so I made a silly little animation just to advertise this episode on my Instagram. Let me just open it up. So I want to do this sort of effect with little blowing up little bits of text and stuff. I'll just need to figure out the name of the add-on. But I do need to keep it as a solid jug for now because it'll make fluid simulation too slow. But I will do that after we've got the fluid simulation working. I'll look it up then. I think it would be cool to do. I agree with you. So we're going to do both cloth and fluid simulation. So let me see how we're going to do this. Okay, so let me just quickly save this. So what we're going to do is, and then blow up. Controlling spilled liquid is difficult. I'm not sure how to do that. So I'll show you the options that you get for this. So what I've got is the jug selected, and we're going to want to use this jug to contain the liquid. So we're going to go into the Physics Properties tab, and we're going to add a fluid physics on here, and under fluid type we want to turn this into an effector over here. So that means it affects fluid. So this is basically to say that this collides with fluid. You have to have several different objects for this. The only problem with that is we would be seeing it the whole time if it was a depression in the floor. But we can work around that. Let's see. So I'm going to add a cylinder object, and this is basically going to be our little bit of fluid in the jug. You can use any shape of things or whatever. And I think there are things you can do to add an effector to make it take a specific shape, but I haven't actually messed with that. Yeah, that could work. It just adds to the complexity of the simulation, which can be pretty slow. But we can refine this as we go. So now I've got just a basic little bit of fluid in there. So with that selected, I'm going to select fluid, and for type I'm going to make it a flow. So this is basically saying this is the stuff inside there. By default it sets it to smoke. We want this to be liquid, so you can do smoke and fire simulations as well. Yeah, if only I had and I had received it. At some point it will happen. Things are weird now. So I'm turning this to liquid, and you get the option of choosing flow behavior. So we've set as geometry. What it will do is we'll turn this block into liquid and then work with it separately after that. So it's only at the start that it does anything. But then you also have inflow and outflow. So you can, if you set it to inflow, you'll basically say this thing is like filling with liquid the whole time. It will start splashing out and filling using that shape. So we kind of just want it to be the geometry because we don't want it to start like adding more liquid. We just want to use the liquid that fills up the volume of that object. So then we need to add one last thing, which is the area where the simulation will happen. So I'm just going to move this box over the sort of the widest area that I think that this liquid will cover. Because the bigger this is, the more simulation calculation will have to happen. So let's see. I don't mind if it cuts the top a little bit over there. Let's just go through the floor a little bit. Let's just have a look. And we want it to at least touch the floor. Let's just go into side view and make it just so it's just about even with the ground over there. Okay, so this is going to be our fluid domain. So if we go to fluid and turn this into a domain, this is where you say this is where the fluid will get simulated. If you didn't have this and you just told it to simulate everywhere, it would be super slow. So we don't want gas, we want this to be liquid. And then you have a setting for resolution. So basically if you have this high, you'll get super high res. Liquid 32, imagine that we're dividing this each side up 32 times, or I think it's the widest side 32 times, which is not very dense. So let's bump this up to 64. And something useful to look at is border collisions. So we've got front, left, back, top, right, and bottom. We kind of only want it to collide with the bottom, so let's turn them all off. And it can actually make it a little bit faster because it doesn't need to calculate collisions with anywhere else. It might now though sort of shoot outside the domain and just sort of vanish. And what we can do is we can start messing around with this. Let's say this starts at 144. And where does this thing fall down? So let's go to 270. So this will be, just under, or just about 200 frames that it needs to calculate. So now we go into, where is that? Where is the button for calculating? Does it move? Am I being stupid? Particles. So there are a lot of different settings here for different things. I just want to get the basic thing. Or is it just gonna do it while we play over here? What is going on? I'm confusing myself. So let me just select this. I'm going to search for bake, fluid simulation. No, that's flip fluid. That's another add-on I have. Why am I being stupid now? We have that. We've got a collider. Geometry. Where is that damn bake button? Am I just being stupid? So yeah, there is a thing that you can use for guides to maybe make it fit a certain shape. Use guiding. I haven't used this feature before, so it might be cool. Is it because this hasn't been... No, it was saved. There might be a conflict with one of my add-ons, because it should show me a bake button. Bake. Fluid bake wall, let's see. Well, it's baking. So that's basically bake means calculate. I don't know why the button was gone. I might be being very stupid. So that might take a little bit of a while. Oh, it's because apparently when they changed one of these settings, there was a new feature called replay. Instead of just baking it, it'll calculate as it goes. So you have to set it to a modular. Right. Let's see if it does create this. It does not. So let's go for, where was it? Cache replay modular. Now we'll get the bake button at the top over here. Bake data. Okay, we don't want it to go from 50. We wanted it to go from 144. Didn't I type that in? I must have been doing something stupid there. Okay, so now this will calculate properly, hopefully. You see it at the bottom there saying how long it will take. And the fluid simulation thing in Blender has been greatly improved in 2.8 and beyond, so you can do really cool stuff. Though I'm not going to go too detailed because it'll take forever to do a detailed one now. But we can get an idea of what it would look like. So now if I play this, let's go zoom in over here. So now you'll see that you get, I don't know if you could see them, little colored particles that were doing stuff, but you'll see that they sort of just fell through the jug. So that means that the collision thing is, firstly the domain was not enough detail, And then we can also tweak the collision volume thing over here to have more detail. It's because it's such a thin thing, it doesn't fit into the domain. So if you divide this 64 times, 164 block doesn't quite fit this. So we can sort of fake it by saying the surface thickness is whatever, I don't know, we would have to test this around a little bit. And then there is a thing called sampling substeps where you can just check between each frame where the thing is. So since this is moving, adding a few substeps might make it a little bit easier to, well, more detailed simulation. And then let's bump this up to 96. I just like using these square numbers. I think Blender likes them. I don't know. Let's just program at hard liking square numbers. Graphics program. Let's see if this looks any better. So what it first does is it calculates the particles, and then you can calculate the mesh. So they have different settings. So what we will do is take those particles it creates now, and then it will make a mesh that fits around with them. So while that's going, don't forget there is a giveaway going on. I do. It's been playing the whole time. Can you not hear it? I was messing with my voice volume, so maybe that messed with it. Can you really not hear it? Now, I just put the volume up. Anyway, what I was saying, there is a giveaway going on, so if you follow and type !enter or ticket, you can enter it into a giveaway to get Who's an Architect. I have it set up so that when I talk it fades the music so that my voice doesn't get drowned out. So you can hear when I stop talking. The volume should pop up a little bit. Otherwise it might sort of drown out what I'm saying. Okay. I might have just had it a little bit soft, sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. %. So you see now that I've bumped it up to a 96 resolution, it takes a lot longer to calculate. I wouldn't want to do any higher on stream because then it will take 15-20 minutes to bake this. People who do like crazy fluid simulations for like movies and stuff, you know, they can spend weeks rendering this out. And it still went right through the jug. So what we can do is, so looking at the shape of this domain, we might not actually need it to be that wide. So let's shrink it down a little bit. Then we'll get more resolution without actually increasing the resolution. We can also, let's see, only start calculating at, let's go for 190. Because we don't really need it to be in there the whole time, so let's go at 190. And then we can bump up the resolution a little bit because we won't be calculating as many frames, so 128, let's see. Time steps, let's add some, so there's a thing over here called adaptive time steps. So if you have more time steps, you can check for more motion between things happening, but that will mean it's calculating so many more times. But I did reduce the amount of frames, so maybe This will go faster. Wow. That went super fast. Too fast. What did I do? Was it because I was in edit mode? Yeah, I was in edit mode. My bad. So have you been thinking of ideas for the next blitzing thing? I've also been thinking about doing a third stream a week, so maybe just a non-specific thing, so not blitzing, not basics, just one of my current projects, or even gaming. I don't know if people would be interested in that, because I enjoy doing this, and yeah, if you guys want to watch more, I'll consider doing a third stream a week. I was thinking on the weekend, so Saturday or Sunday. I don't know if you have a preference for that. This is taking a long time to calculate. You can look at my pretty face while I do this. Let's do raffle for 250 points. I know you guys like your points. Yeah, get in there. Sup, Glenn? And well done, Luke.
Wow.
Yeah, that's still calculating. I just saw something that some of you might like the look of. Let me switch to my browser. The merch shop that I use for my merch has now started doing tank tops. Would you like it if I put some of my things onto tank tops? Unfortunately, it's not letting me put more things on there, so I might have to remove things to put that on. But I might also put some of those designs on my Design by Humans store, so that's got other options as well. This one I just get a little bit more in return from, so it's kind of why it's better. But if you want to see some tank tops for the merch, it's worth it. So that's all these things sitting over here. Again, my favorite is still the rope t-shirt. Oh yeah, okay, finally it's finished its baking. Sorry, I just needed to fill time there while it was baking. So let's see. Well, that's better. Except it's still going through the base there. So what I'm going to do is... Oh, interesting. So I started it at frame, what was it, 190, and at that point this thing was not in the jug, so that doesn't help. And let's put that there. So yeah, these are the annoying things that sometimes you just have to do these simulations until you get something that works. You're not always going to know exactly what is going to work straight away. Let's see. That's free data. I'm going to reduce the time steps a little bit just so it goes a bit quicker. I'm going to bump up the thickness of this a little bit. And let's see if this goes any better. Clan! Luke wants to duel you. Do some fighting. So I also had ideas for the future things to make, so I'm not sure which you would find more interesting. I was considering doing a couple basics episodes on character rigging, so go through the process of creating a character and actually animating the limbs and stuff like that. Or we can do some sort of simpler scene modeling. So I think like the Lord of the Rings thing that I originally did kind of got a little bit advanced. So maybe we do just something contained. So I had a suggestion of doing like one of the shuttles from Star Trek. So it's a nice small contained thing. You can't go bigger than the shuttle itself, but you can go pretty detailed on the inside if you want. You can do some hard surface modeling with booleans and stuff. Or just messing with features in Blender. As you can see, this takes a little bit of a while. Let me find that add-on. For shattering. Cell fracture add-on, that's what it's called. As soon as this is finished baking, then I can have a look at that. Yeah, because fracturing is really cool. So for this, the animation that I did, I used LuxCore render for it, just because it was actually a little bit quicker for creating a render in this case. So this is not great, but I'll show you what it actually looks like. So it's creating the particles in there. It's not colliding with the mesh properly, but let's just show you what it would look like. So we go into the mesh settings here, and then we turn that on. And I'm not going to mess with those settings. They should be alright for now. And if I click bake mesh, it'll take these particles and try create a mesh around that. So I'm going to have to tweak this myself a little bit later on to get it to fit in the jug properly. I think I'm going to leave the fluid after this because tweaking it is just a time consuming thing. Even just creating this mesh is slow. And the more resolution you put in here, the higher these times will take. And it's, you know, exponential because it's not just going, it's going with the square cube law, because the higher the number is scaled by 3 dimensions. So yeah, it gets slower and slower the more you add. So then I want to do the letters and then the fracturing. At least those should be quicker. Let's see what this actually looks like. Finally almost done. Okay, so if I go into view now, you'll see we get this little puddle forming over here, but it just goes straight through the blender because it was incorrect. and we haven't set up proper friction and stuff in the base, so you just sort of see how these particles now just sort of spread out. So let's hide that for now and start working with the letters in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add text. So I'm going to press tab to edit mode. I'm going to say Blender. I'm going to grab this. Get it sort of the size that I want the text to be. Maybe a little bit smaller than that. I'm going to edit these a little bit just to match my drawing over here. So we just get this about that scale. Something like that. So let's grab this. Oh yeah, their logo actually uses little letters. So I'm not going to go with any fancy fonts in this. You could if you wanted to. But I'm going to hand modify this, and I'm just going to select the text and I'm going to say convert to mesh. So now I can edit this just like it was an ordinary mesh. So with this then I can sort of reshape these to sort of look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to use a actually no, it's way easier if I just do this before I applied it to a mesh. Let's just go back. And I'm going to select the text and I'm going to do just the built-in extrude and bevel, because kind of this won't be any worse than what I was going to do. So then we get these nice sort of fluffy round letters. They're not the exact shape that I want, but it's fine. So I just want to get it so that it's not sort of intersecting with itself like that. So the E, we want it to be, you know, its own little bit there. Yeah, so now I'm just going to go and convert this to mesh. I'm just right clicking on it. And then we get this nice little mesh. But you will see that if I go click L over one of these, it's actually divided into bits, which is not ideal. We want it to all be joined together for what we want to do. So I'm just going to select all. I'm going to say M to merge and say by distance. And you see it says remove 984 vertices. So that will now, if I press L, you'll see it's all now one solid thing. But if you look at the mesh structure over here, it's kind of all over the place. It's, you know, we've got some triangles, we've got some long faces, we've got some small faces. If we just do a cloth simulation with this now, it's going to be weird because some bits will have more detail than others, and it's going to be, you know, it's not going to look like a smooth cloth thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a thing called remeshing. I think I showed you this before. And you've got two different types. You've got voxel and quad remeshing. So this is under the object data thing. And I'm going to do the voxel one, not necessarily because it's better, but because I found that the quad remesh doesn't seem to like working with these meshes, though it does create nicer geometry. I'm not sure what voxel size, so I'm just going to experiment. Fairly small, but I don't want it overly detailed for the simulation. It's just before I do that, I want to just change some of these shapes a little bit. So I'm just going to turn on the proportional editing, turn on connected only, maybe flatten up this B a bit, round out the tip. Just so I can get sort of more balloony sort of shapes on here. Don't have to do this, but if I'm going to do it, I might as well make it look nice-ish. And it's easier to do this now than when it's a higher density mesh. Let's just grab this, make it a little bit rounder. I'm not trying to replicate any specific font like the actual logo. Just trying to make it cool. Enough, at least. So I'm just adding edge loops and dragging them out just to round it out a little bit. So that's Control R and then just grab and move. So now, yeah, this just looks a little bit rounder. So we're going to do the voxel remesh. I'm also going to turn on smooth normals here. And there's a thing called adaptivity. So if I turn that up, it basically tries to reduce it a little bit on big edges. In fact, I actually don't want that. Let's turn that off because we want it to be an even mesh. Yeah, being stupid. So I don't know, this might be very dense. 0.02 meters, that's 2 centimeters. I don't actually know. So this dimensions is 2 by 0.7 meters. We'll see. So we're going to voxel remesh, and you'll see that bits have actually joined together, and the mesh now is this nice sort of even structure, but we've got bits that are sort of joined together. So which is not what I wanted, so I'm just going to undo a little bit, and let's go just a little bit smaller. So let's go to 0.15. So now you see it's a little bit more dense, but the E is still joined to itself, both of them. Let's just go to 0.01. If you go too low on this, you'll get absolutely ridiculously dense meshes. And I think that's already too dense. So what we're going to do is undo. I'm going to grab the E tips over here, because it's the only thing that's really slowing us down. So let's just grab those edges and just move them down a little bit so it doesn't do into it. You wouldn't really want to do this with a proper logo, but I'm just doing this for fun. So now we can actually go a little bit less dense, because the fluid simulation will be, cloth simulation will be a little bit crazy and slow if we do it too dense. So yeah, now we've got that. What we can do now, I just wanted to get it the right size, is let's go to the point where it's gonna be, and I'm trying to think what the best way to do this would be. So I think I'm going to use shape keys just so I can control where it ends up. So this will make sense just now. So I'm going to have it positioned sort of where I want. So let's actually have it sort of come out of here. Where does this thing land? So let's have this come out over there like this. So this is sort of where we want the final letters to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, let's just get some edge loops in like the center of let's just turn off X-ray. The center of each of these letters. So imagine that's sort of like a seam in the sort of balloon thing over there. I'm going to create a vertex group, and I'm going to assign these selected vertices to that group. And this isn't actually going to work. Okay, wait, I know what. So the guiding these things is the difficult process. So we want it to this be the final location. So if we select this, we're going to add a shape key for the basis, and we're going to go in here, add a shape key for final position. I'm not sure if this is going to work. So that'll be the final position. We could also just use the basis, and then we're going to have a shape key for in jug. I'm not sure if this will work. Let's go to 180. So then we're going to grab this. No, we're going to go into edit mode with the in jug shape key selected. Rotate these letters around and sort of get them in the jug over here. It might be a little bit messy. Let's grab some of these and just shove them around in here. So Shift L, just so it all fits in there. So that'll be the starting position. So if we go the shape key and put that on 1, set this as a keyframe over here. So add a keyframe, and then the next keyframe we just turn that off so that it can do its own thing. Then I think we can make it simulate the cloth here. I've never tried this, so we'll see what happens. So we're going to go into cloth, turn cloth on this, and we're just going to say we're going to go from frame 180 to 270 was when the other one went on, the fluid at least. So let's see, we want to go and turn on the shape from rest shape key is to get the, so that's the basic shape. So we were going to start with the in jug, and then maybe we can do something with this to get it going. So let's see, start 180. Let's go into X-ray mode here. I just want to see if this works. Start playing. Okay, we don't have collision on here, do we? We do not. Turn collision on the jug. Don't crash Blender. I don't know. This is fun. I just enjoy doing these weird things with Blender just because I can. Okay, so we have collision on now, so you can see the cloth in there moving with this jug. I might have to turn down the detail of the simulation because it is going a bit slow, and it's sort of getting stuck at the bottom there. Some of it went flying and some of it got stuck, so let's just stop. So yeah, I kind of went flying out there. It's because we don't have collision with the ground here, so let's grab the ground, add collision there. Just going to quickly save this just in case. Let's go back. I'm going to turn down quality steps here in cloth. I'm going to go through these settings just now, but this will just make things go a little bit quicker. Let's see. Goes pretty slowly, as long as it hasn't crashed. Damn slow computer. Okay, so there the letters go flying and then they smack with the ground, at least they should, so long as the collision is working correctly. It may have been not enough collision detail on here, so I might have to actually lower the density of this mesh, but it's too late now because I already shape keyed it. That's annoying, because once you add a shape key to a mesh, it doesn't like you messing with the mesh itself because it works on the specific vertices you've got. Let's see. It can go a little bit quicker if you just click on bake instead of trying to play it. So let's just see. I'm going to bump up the collision quality. And then I'm going to turn on the thing that we actually want to have on here, which is pressure. So if we bump up the pressure in here to... So we're going to start with 0. And then we're going to animate it that when it sort of hits the ground. I'll try and calculate the cloth while I'm scrubbing here. Stupid Blender. Oh, it's stupid me. Should have known it was going to do that. So let's go from frame 202. Let's bump up the pressure. Let's try 100. Gonna add a keyframe there. So that's why we wanted it to be a solid mesh for each letter, because we're now gonna like pump them up with air, and if it's not a solid mesh it doesn't work. So I'm gonna now say bake and see what we get out of this. So this is the one problem when you're doing these simulations, is that you don't have a 100% control of what it's going to look like. So if you really want it to be, perfect, exactly how you wanted it to look, you would have to do like manual shape keying and sculpting and things like that. But ain't nobody got time for that. Hey guys. Raffle, get in it! The problem with these simulations is now on the stream is kind of dead air because this shit needs to calculate and I don't know what to do while that's happening. Play my goose. Hog. My business goose. Hey, simulation is done, so now you can skip this. So let's see, what do we get? It's bouncing around in there. And it looks absolutely terrible. And it still shoots through the ground because there's not enough detail in there. Hey, but at least they puffed out a bit. Ah, no. So I think we need to add dampening so it slows down the motion, and we can also do impulse clamping, which reduces the maximum velocity of things as well. Helps reduce instability as well. And if I select the base over here, actually what I can do is I can add, I'm going to shifty duplicate it and make a much smaller one. Get some more detail on here and subdivide it so we get more mesh data for it to collide with. So I'm going to turn off collision on that. This I'm going to bump up the friction. Let's go to 50. And I'm just going to make it so that this doesn't render. Or we can show it in the viewport. I'm going to turn down the collision quality a little bit, we'll go a little bit quicker. And let's do one more back. If this doesn't work, then I'll move on. I'll show you individually, like with just one thing, how to use this stuff, because it's fun. So I'm looking at the modifier, add-on that you were curious about, Luke, which is the thing for shattering things. So it's a cell fracture add-on which you can use to fracture things. There's also, I think, a paid add-on as well that does it in a more advanced way, but yeah, no. What does carve it tool do? It's basically for booleans. Okay. There's so many different add-ons and stuff. These are just the built-in ones, and then you can get one thing that I've been interested in is called, what's it? Can't remember the thing, but it works for booleans and makes hard ops. That's a thing for making Boolean operations and hard surface modeling easier, which is cool, but it's like $40. It's not that expensive, but me. Okay, this is almost done. Okay, let's see what we got. It's still not colliding with the ground. Okay, so let's just save, and I'll show you in the file that I created for that little Instagram post. That's at PhotonWin on Instagram if you want to follow. So basically it's the same thing. I created this text, and then I just have the pressure animated on here. So if I go into the physics thing here, I do negative pressure to suck out air, and then I animate it to pop out the pressure again, and you get these lovely sort of little squishy, fabricy looking things on here, because I mean it is cloth sim. So if I create a, let's go to a new scene and just do it from scratch, just with a simple mesh so we don't have to worry about details. So I'm just gonna subdivide, just you do need some detail. Yeah, so let's go for, yeah, like that, nothing too crazy, just 5 subdivisions. So we're gonna add cloth to this and collision to the ground, and then if we play, we just get this sort of cube that sort of sits there. Let's just turn on some smoothing, so it sort of keeps a little bit of structure because the cloth has a little bit of built-in strength to it. But you can also, with the cloth sim, change to different presets. So if we make it silk, you'll see it's a little bit of a weaker sort of thing, sort of different look, and it just keeps that structure because it's got a thing called springs and stuff. But it's just, I don't know, for some reason I find the denim preset looks really good. It's also got a default higher quality. Oops. Wow. I say that and then it doesn't even calculate it. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on pressure. On 0 it will do nothing, so let's bump it up to 500. And then you should see it went too crazy. Let's go to 100. So you see it sort of puffs up completely and then it turns into sort of a bouncy ball. And that was originally from a cube. So that instantly puffs it up. So what we can do is, to make it not this instant puff up, let's add a frame at 20 keyframes for 100. So I on pressure, go to the start, and let's actually make this -10. So it sort of sucks out the air at the start and then puffs up. So you see we get a frame where it sort of goes sucking it in, and then it starts puffing up. You can actually go a little bit longer with this. Let's make it 50 frames and suck out for 20 frames at the start. So you can see how this can be a really powerful effect to do stuff with. This is new in 2.8. So if I add a subdivision, an I rate, since that calculated pretty quickly, we can add that in there, recalculate, So the more geometry you have, the cooler the way things looking. Yeah. So that's the sort of effect we want to get with those words going out of the text there later on. And then there are some settings that you can also use to make slightly different shapes on this. So there's under the shape settings in the cloth, there's a thing called the shrinking factor. So this can just sort of make it so that the mesh puckers up a little bit. So if we don't want to go too high, shrink it to 0.2-ish. So then it shrinks down and then puffs up a little bit. So there's like a little bit more of a, like this is made out of rubber. Or you can go in the opposite direction with a negative value. And then you have it sort of like a really loose fiber. So it's sort of, it basically just makes it sort of more relaxed. And then you can sort of, this feels more like it's a cloth bag that's inflating or something. Versus the other thing, which is more like a stretchy sort of expandy thing. So you see it sort of collapses in on itself. It keeps a little bit of structure. Let's add a little bit more geometry. Why not? Let's add a weighted normal. It's got that nice little wobble and jiggle in it. Super satisfying. The nice thing is that Blender will cache it, so what it has calculated you can now scrub through nice and quickly. I find this incredibly satisfying, this bit where the corner sort of pops out over here. It's like a beanbag inflating. And then you get this little squash over here. So this is actually like the super easy way to do the classic squash and stretch. I don't know if you know that. It's like one of the animation principles. It's one of the first things I teach when I do After Effects with people at the university. It's basically it's one of the things Disney does, is when something is impacting with something you want it to squish, and when it's moving fast you want it to stretch out so it goes longer and stuff. So this is like cheating to get that effect, because if you get that little squash, stretch as it goes up, squash when it goes down. God, I love that jiggle. And we can then go and see what would this look like if we made this instead out of silk. It's a completely different simulation because it's much weaker and stretchier, so that pressure is actually way too high for this material. So you can get completely different simulations based on what material is hit. So if we do, let's go 15. Actually no, we don't need to change the keyframe. There is another setting, so factor, so we can go to 0.1 and then that'll just be 10 times weaker effect on the inflation. So now we get something a little bit similar looking, but it's now made out of silk. Let's go to 0.01 and see how that looks. So this will now have a very pathetic little inflation effect. Nice folded corners on there. So remember when I was making those boxes on the rover? If you were watching at that point, this would have been a nice way to actually do that. If you do the shrinking actually. So if we now pump it up like that, add a keyframe to the shrink factor and then sort of shrink it up a bit. we might get some nice little wrinkles in here. So I'm just really having fun messing around with some simulations over here. See if we can get a little bit of wrinkles in there for a second. And then it sort of evens out a little bit though. So anything in here you can animate and have some cool effects from it. So you can animate it then to sort of get big. Get even bigger. I just really enjoy this. Bigger and then bonk, bonk. So that's just one of the simulation things. You can also do soft bodies, fluids we've sort of looked at. Rigid bodies is for the nice fun effect of if we just add a cube here. Turn on rigid body. If we now play, why is this not? Let's just subdivide this. Why is that not colliding? Let's just subdivide this a little bit more. I don't know why it's not working. Oh, does it have to actually also be a rigid body and a non-passive rigid body? Then it doesn't actually go with... Yeah, I think that's the case. Yeah. So then you can do the cool little simulations of objects and stuff. So if we now... Let's just go back, grab this, grab this, grab this. It's not going to actually interact with the cloth because it's not, they don't have a cloth collision thing on them. So we would have to actually go add collisions onto them, because collisions are for soft bodies and then rigid bodies collide with rigid bodies. So you see they're not actually colliding with the cloth over here. Let's see, can we... What happens if we turn that into a rigid body? I'm just curious. Now this is gonna mess up things probably. Let's see, animate it. I don't like this. But yeah, fun stuff you can do. Let's just add all the things. Yeah, they don't collide with the cloth by default. What happens if we put a soft body on here? I'm curious. Can we make it so that there must be a way? Because you can also reach body constraints. Convex hull. Let's use mesh. Source to form. Yeah, so we're having it. We're telling it that this is a rigid body that is animated separately using a deforming mesh. Let's see. Doesn't seem to make any difference. It's just sitting on top of it. So let's see what happens. Yeah, you see they just sort of collide with the oh wait, is it because we've got it? No. I don't know. Anyway, that was just random stuff. Let's see if we can do cell fracture. Oh, I do have that turned on. So I'm gonna delete that text for this version. So this jug, we want to get it exploding when it hits the ground. Let's turn that off. So cell fracture selected mesh objects. I can't remember how this thing works, but let's just find the frame where this hits the ground. There, 200. Nice convenient number. So cell fracture selected mesh objects. So now we get a whole lot of them. So point source. So you can limit the amount of objects, randomize point distribution. Yeah, that's good. Let's randomize it. There are a lot of different things here. Recursive shatter, so that will shatter smaller bits. Kind of want to see what that looks like. I'll just turn it on to sharp edges, apply edge splits, so that will make sure that it's got sharp bits. Physics using volume. Doesn't seem to be any setting to make it go from a specific frame. So maybe if we just add a keyframe here. I'm not sure if it does it from a specific keyframe or if it does it from the start. So let's see what happens. So you see it creates a mesh around it where it uses Voronoi noise field to create a bunch of booleans that will then cut the object up into bits, and then we get these little fractured bits over here, and then they should have rigid bodies applied to them, or can have rigid bodies applied to them. I've been using Blender for a long time. I might not be very good with some of these things, but I know how they work. So now we've got this nice little bits. Because if you were to do this manually, just imagine how tedious it would be. But I don't think it actually applied. It didn't. It was just getting hard to control, so I think I'm going to do that in my own time, because you guys don't want to see this thing calculate fluids over and over again. Let's add some more recursion. I thought there was an option to turn on physics over here. Yeah, usually I just do these things and then open up YouTube or something. Because this is going to get annoying. It's going to change the texture on the mesh. So now, okay, so it keeps the original, which is cool. So we can keyframe it so that, where is that in the list? Is it? Oh, it's this guy. So we can keyframe the visibility of this. So I've forgotten how you can keyframe that. I'm being very stupid today. Properties, visual.
Embarrassing!
It is, isn't it? Let's go to the dope sheet. So this is where you get all the animation data of objects. So this is going to be our jug. I didn't name it, so there's jug. So we want to get... No, do we want to use the action editor? No. Why am I being so dumb with this? Graph editor. So this is where you can see the animations of a thing as a graph. So if I... Well, it doesn't have moving keyframes, so it doesn't actually show anything over here. I'm gonna have to Google this. Blender animate. I think this has changed, one of the things that's changed between 2.7 and 2.8. I haven't done this before. Well, since 2.8. Where is this? Can I just go and do what I said before and say I for hide viewport? Oh, hide. There we go. Okay. So I just need to go over the thing and add a keyframe there to turn that on and off, like that. So then it's no longer visible, and then I'll have to do it for all the bitty bits over here. So let's also make that invisible. Let's grab these, all of them. So like that, select them. So we want to go to 200, turn them off. Can I not turn them all off at once? Well, that's annoying. Let's add an empty to turn it into a group. So let's add a plain axis. I'm going to call this fract. Doesn't matter. So we're going to select all of these guys, just because I don't want to click that 50 times while scrolling through here. Select that, Control P, keep transform, so then I can select this and then I can say turn that off. So if I go shift turn that off, shift turn that on, then I can go. Can I? Let's just see. I might be making my life difficult here. Ah, that's annoying, so I'm gonna have to go through here and add these all manually. Because you don't want the fractures to be visible until it hits the ground, right? Yeah, I made too many objects. Then I'm gonna have to do this all over again. There's probably an easy way to do this, add keyframe to all of these, but screw it. So now we're gonna go one frame over. Shift click, shift click. So this just makes it render or not render in each frame. Now these are getting shown. This is a tedious process, but we've got a couple hundred of these things. Well, 138. So now let's go into, yeah, visible, not visible. Dum, dum, dum. Let's just turn on X-ray to be sure. Now all of those need to get a rigid body. Now I think that only applies to one. Yeah. Come on, there's got to be a way to add it to all. Add rigid body. Does it add it to them all? Yes, it did. So now we can select the ground. And we're going to add a rigid body, say this is passive. So then they can collide against that. Okay, so now we get it falling and they did bugger all. Let's just check this. Why are they doing nothing? Oh, it's because they use convex hull. But that shouldn't be a problem, it should still work. I think I went about this in the wrong way. I think there's something about that is it something to do with, well, what we can do is maybe I can add a force. So let's go, maybe that'll just make it wake up or something, because it does have a setting to turn off the physics of a thing. I've done something that makes this thing disappear, that I turned that off for some reason. I did. Oops. I still want that to be visible. Let's see. So let's add a force field using a force. in the center, just sort of over here. So these are used for controlling physics effects. I'm not sure if they affect rigid bodies, but let's have a look. So we want this to turn on. So we're going to put a strength of 0, animate that, and then go to 500 for 1 frame, and then down to 0 again. I don't know if this will work or not. So let's go from 199. Didn't do anything. What am I doing wrong here? Let's check this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Let me just check this. Let me create a new scene. So I'm just going to save this as frac. Create this, let's fracture. And by default it does nothing. So that is the default setting. It does no immediate collision stuff. So let's try cell fracture. It's supposed to make this easy, I don't know, because there's a physics thing over here. Why isn't it doing it? Am I missing a setting? I can do this manually now because there's only 7 of them for this. So now that works. So is it because... Okay, so I think I know what I need to do. I need to create another animation, or another file of that when it's on the ground shattering, and start that from 0. Because I think there must be a way to turn on or off a physics thing, but I think it's easiest to just do a separate file and render it from, unless I don't know. Is there a big rigid? Okay, so that will bake the physics. So let's go back and see. Because I think it's trying to calculate it from the start, but we want these to be only starting to activate at frame 200. So what we're probably going to find is that they're going to just immediately explode from the start. We're currently not seeing them because I've keyframed them to be inactive, so we're going to go into a frame and suddenly they're nowhere to be found. Yeah, that's the problem. So if we go, just select a couple of them and say view, frame selected. Yeah, they are animating all the way from the start. So we need to do, just reopen it from the start. Don't want those baked things, so we want to select all of these. I don't know how to apply this to all of them at once. That is one of the annoying things about some of these things. We want to start deactivated on all of them, but this is only going to apply to one of them. Yeah. Can we? Okay, so there is an add-on I've heard about recently called copy settings, copy attributes. So if I activate that, can I select? So that is, well, let's go grab that one because we know where it is. So we're going to select all of these, shift, oh wow, come on. So let's grab them all again. Select that, space, copy, rigid body settings. So it should copy the settings from the one to another one. It did. Great. So starts deactivated. Let's now bake all physics. Now unless another force starts on them, it should stay in one spot, and then you'll see. Are they still in the middle of nowhere? They're still in the middle of nowhere. So okay, let's turn this into a new file. So this will be scene where everything is still. That's the final positions of all these things. So let's grab this. Final keyframe will be the only keyframe. Delete keyframes. This guy will only be in that position. This guy will only be in that position. So then we get this guy. It doesn't matter for the physics simulation, but let's just go to the end, delete those keyframes. Unfortunately, we have all these animated things. Can I do copy key, copy visible, copy? Oh, I'll just have to manually do some of that stuff. This, we must turn that into a rigid body passive. Vehicle physics. Okay. Delete all physics base, make all physics. Let's see. We don't really need 300 frames of this, but let's see. Seriously, are they still all in the middle of nowhere? Yeah. So they didn't end up colliding with us. See, you can see why this can get a bit tedious. Make all physics. Seriously? Why is it not colliding? See, now they're all shooting out to the other side of the world. Maybe this needs an enormous amount of friction. Also, I'm going to give up and then just do this in my own time. Today has been a little bit of a failure, hasn't it? We haven't got to a final product. I'm a little bit disappointed. Let's see, can we go and delete all the keyframes with this? We'll just make them visible at the start. Yeah, so now we can see what it would have. And this needs to be invisible from the start because we don't need this. Jug. Don't need the jug. Is it because this force? Let's delete the force. Maybe. Fake. Oh, thanks, Luke. Fake all physics. Let's see again. Can I stop and just see? Let's start at 0. No, I didn't save it. That's annoying. Why is it not doing it? Now it's doing nothing. Okay, so it does need that force effector. I think it's because I've now turned on that start deactivated thing. So if we select them all again, select that, copy rigid settings. Make go physics. Now it should do something. Let's see. I'd like to end it off with a nice satisfying crunch. Okay, it needs a little bit of an explosion. That's just now with a little sad blip. But quite cool. So let's add a force field using a force, and we want it to be in that little impact area because that's where it would sort of originate from, I would say. And let's make it strength 10, and then after like so many frames it goes to 0. Delete all physics breaks, make. Didn't do much. Are they not affected by that? It might be that they're not affected by force objects. In which case we can add a force on a specific one. Not sure. Because that's too boring. Let's add an invisible object over here. Cube with a rigid body set to animated. Passive. And we can just use this to add a little impulse to it. I'm not sure if forces act upon things, so I'm just going to do it like this. And so we're going to go to frame 0, animate the position, go to frame 1, push it up just so we get a little bit of impulse, and then frame 2, push it back down. So now that will go boonk, and that should just add a little bit of a schmack to it. So delete all physics, bake. Not enough. So let's go to frame 2, move it up even further. Let's see. Doesn't seem to do enough, or that it doesn't register for long enough to keep the collision. So let's make it a little bit longer. And this should be the last thing we need to do. Let's see. Yeah, that sort of worked. We've got a little satisfying big chunk that's now doing that rocking over there, which looks cool. I wouldn't call that like an explosive shatter, that's more like a slow crumble. So I do think it needs a little bit more shattering force. Maybe if I just make this a little bit of a bigger boy. Last time, let's see. Delete all physics, bake all physics. It's a little bit better. Enjoy the little rotor trying to spin for a half second there. So this we can make it invisible. And then we get a little frame over here where the stuff is all on the ground. Well, I'm going to have some fun with this and render out a more complete animation, and then when we have blitzing with Blender next week sometime, we'll have a slightly better intro, I think. Let me know if you come up with any ideas for things to create next week, or for things you want to see in future basics and stuff. And yeah, I'm going to let you know what I'm going to do with a third stream in a week. I'm still dabbling with that idea. Kind of like the idea of doing a little bit of gaming, maybe. Got some ideas of games that have some mods with Twitch integration. Could be fun. Anyway, thanks for joining in. This was a little bit of a silly physics and simulation episode. I quite enjoyed it. I'll see you next week. Okie dokie. Bye bye. Love you all.
So as you can see, I went and I added a bit of stuff to that. I did some particle effects and I rendered it all out again, and I think it looks pretty cool. So if you enjoy this and you want to see more of my stuff, follow me on Twitch, and a like and a subscribe on YouTube would do a lot of good. Just getting started out in this content creation stuff, and it really helps with every little bit. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you next time. Join in for a Blitzing with Blender on most Tuesday nights on Twitch. Okay, bye.